When you work with a word processor, and of course we're looking at Word today, it won't take very long before you realize that from time to time you may need to find a word or a phrase and then correct it, or perhaps even replace some of the words or letters that are within that word or phrase. Well, fortunately, we have the editing group that's on the Home tab on the ribbon in Word, and we can do all sorts of things. We can find words if we want to do that. We can find those words and then replace them with something else. Occasionally, for example, names of things change. Occasionally, perhaps you have typed in a company name and you realize that there's a capital letter in the middle of the name, or there's a dash that you weren't anticipating. And so you need to find it and then replace it with something else that's actually correct. You might also from time to time decide that you want to find, let's say, words formatted a certain way, or even find pictures that are embedded within your document. Well, you can do all of that and a lot more by using the editing group in Word. Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and today we're going to look at that editing group and just play around with some of the possibilities of what we can do when we use that editing group. Our first example document today is rather short because it's about my adventures at the DMV, but it should help us practice some of what we want to learn when it comes to that editing group in Word. To find the editing group, we're going to go up, of course, on the Home tab, but go to the middle of the ribbon and then go to the right, and we'll eventually bump into editing. Now, the editing group has three main choices here of find, replace, and select. And if we click the drop down for find, we'll notice that there are also three choices here of find, which if you go look to the right of my mouse, we can see that find is also Control F, the keyboard shortcut, and you may even already be familiar with that. Or there is an advanced find that you may not be as familiar with, or there is also a go to. Well, let's click Find, and when we click Find, it automatically brings up the navigation pane on the left. Now, the navigation pane has more than just the results of a find. It also has, as you can see where my mouse is pointing, headings. So if I have a document that is styled with headings, it would give me a list of those particular words that have heading styles. To the right of that, pages is like kind of navigation. It shows you thumbnails of each page, and you could go very easily then from page 1 to page 5 by just simply clicking thumbnails. But what we're interested in today is this Results tab, where we are going to get the results of any search that we do. So I'm going to click in this search box. I already have an insertion point here, and I'm going to type receipt. And as I type, it even starts finding the words that match. And just going straight down then, I can see that even though it has found receipt, and in every case here it's a plural, receipts with an S, it also finds the words surrounding that particular find. And I have 4. It also told me that right above the word headings and right below where I typed in the word. Now, as I go to the right to my actual document, I can see that receipt is highlighted every time that it has found that particular word. Well, let's do another example. And to do that, what we want to be sure to do is click on this X that's to the right of the search box. The reason for that is if I were to close out of the navigation pane, well, let's do that. Let me close out. And then let's do another find. So let's go to find, and I'll just click on the button. And notice that it has retained the search from before. So I can either press my delete key on my keyboard, or I can come over to this X to the right of that box and clear out the search. Now in this case, I'm just going to type min wondering what it can find, I'm relatively certain it's going to be able to find minute. Well, yes, as we look down, again, we have 4 results, and each one of these is also minutes. And as I go to the right, it has found minutes 4 times within one paragraph. So you can see how that just helps you find what you're looking for, and then if you needed to change something, it would be really easy to go to your document, click in that particular spot in your document, and make the change that you want to make. There are a lot of times when the kind of search that we have done is precisely what you need. It's just a simple search, it's not complicated, but sometimes that simple search doesn't do quite what you want, or it gives you a whole lot of results that you really don't need, and you would like to narrow down the results a little bit. One of the things that we can do then is, well, first of all, let's get rid of min here, clear it out by clicking on the X. And then we can go to the right of the magnifying glass that we see, click that drop down, and we can see that we have something called options. Now below options you have advanced find, replace, and go to, just like you have on the ribbon. But if we click on options, we can see that there are a whole lot of choices here that will help you either expand or narrow down the results that you would like to get. And we're going to look at the first one here, match case. So first of all, we aren't going to match case, so we'll click cancel. And then when we search, we're going to type DMV. I think it's there in the document a couple of times. Yes, it is. So I have typed lowercase because lots of times people just use lowercase unless they absolutely have to use uppercase. So we have DMV, and then we have 2 results that are both capitalized. So that's okay because we said we didn't care if we matched the case or not. But now let me go back up to where we have the DMV search term, go to the right where we have the drop down, go to options. This time we're going to kind of reset things by saying we want to match case and click OK. Now here's what happens. If I type DMV lowercase, look at that. There are no matches because DMV in the document is uppercase, DMV in my search term is lowercase. So you need to be aware that sometimes options get set and then you forget to turn them off as well, and then you'll get no results when in fact if I go back in and retype DMV with capital letters, now I have those 2 results that match the particular case. Now I said we need to turn it off when we're finished if that's what we want to do. So let's go to the drop down arrow, go to options, and where we have match case in that checkbox, I just click on the checkbox to turn off that particular check and click OK. And now we're set for another search. I've scrolled back up to the top of our document, and for our next search we are going to look at some more options, and this one is called Find Whole Words Only. So first of all, we're just going to go to our search box here in the navigation pane, and I'm going to type good, and it finds 4 results, but notice that it finds good, but it also finds goodwill. So what happens if I only want to find good and not goodwill? Well, what I can do is come over to our little drop down arrow and go to options, and our second choice here on the left is find whole words only. Now what that really kind of means is we want to find the exact word and no more or no less than what we have typed. So if we find whole words only, we'll click OK. And this time when I type good and press enter, it finds 3 only. It does not find goodwill because goodwill is more than that whole word of good. And again, I'm going to go back to options and turn off find whole words only. As you become more familiar with searching for particular content within a document, you may find that what would really help is to be able to use wildcards. And the two most common wildcards are the asterisk, which means any number of characters, and the question mark, which means only one character. So first of all, let me go back to our little drop down in our search box here, and I'm going to go to options, and this time I'm going to say I want to use wildcards. And notice that when I say I want to use wildcards, some of the other options are grayed out automatically. But let's use wildcards here, and I'll click OK. And then I'm going to type B question mark T. So it means that I want to find all of the words that have a B, one character that could be basically any vowel, and then it will end with T. And then we can either press enter or search, and it finds 4. It finds but and bit mostly. I guess I didn't write bat or bet, but you can see how this could help you find words that maybe you're not quite sure how they're spelled, but you're pretty sure there's only, say, one letter that would make the difference in how you're spelling things. Well, we could also then go back up, and instead of that question mark, I could put an asterisk. Now, asterisk is any number of characters. So when I press enter here, it finds 18 results, and look at the difference. It found, for example, be turned, because it found, of course, the word be, and then the T actually begins another word. Same thing here, because they. Now this is even more interesting. It may be even multiple, so it starts with a B, any number of characters, and the highlighting stops with the T. So that is such a broad search that, well, sometimes that really works for you, but other times you may find that you want to bring that down a little bit. But either way, when I click that drop down, go back to options and take off use wildcards, then it's going to be hard for me to find much of anything that starts with a B. What would you do? Maybe a space T? Probably not. There's no matches. So wildcards can be just what you need at certain times. There's another option here that I find somewhat fascinating, really. So let's go back to our drop-down arrow, go to options, and this time we're going to find sounds like, and check that box, and again it grays out some of the possibilities. We will click OK, and this time for sounds like, I think I'm going to type who and press enter, and it finds 3 results. It finds who, which of course makes sense. Who sounds like who, but look at that, who, which, yes, it does sound like. Now the third choice here, way, I don't know, depends on your accent, I guess. So some of these are going to be closer than others, but if, again, you're not quite sure how to spell something, this could help you find the words that you're trying to find. There is one other option here that I find really interesting, so I'm going to go ahead, click on the X to remove who. Then I'm going to click on my drop down here, go to options. I'm going to, of course, turn off sounds like, and I'm going to go with this find all word forms. So in some ways this can help you if you know that you want to use more active voice, that you don't want to use past tense or future tense. This would help you find where your grammar is slightly inconsistent. So find all word forms, we'll click OK, and then I'm going to come up to the box, and what we're going to look for is, and press enter, it finds 10 results. So it found is, but it also found be and was. So different conjugations of that is verb, past tense, present tense. Be, I guess that's just the infinitive form of that verb. So sometimes finding different types of variations of especially verbs could be a really nice help in helping you be consistent in your grammar and really tightening up your document and your writing. Let's go back to the top of our document, and we're going to remove is as our search term here by clicking on the X, and then we'll go to the right and the drop down and options. We're going to turn off the find all word forms, at least in English. And then on the right, we have some other choices that you probably won't use a lot, but may be a great help from time to time. There are two that are very similar. One is match the prefix, so it'll match just the first part of the word only. And so if I had some letters and they were at the end of the word, if I have match prefix, it wouldn't find those. But we'll do just an example of something very similar where we're going to match the suffix, which would be at the end of the word. And we'll click OK, and then our search term that we're going to use is simply AL. And we'll find, and we have 3 results, and notice how AL is at the end of each one of those words. It's the suffix. Now let's turn that off. Go back to options, turn off match suffix, click OK, and I'll need to retype AL, but I'll press enter, and this time I have 9 results because now it's in the middle of maligned, for example. Of course it's at the end, but it's also at the beginning of all, looks like the word that I used most, but I even have a really in here as well. So it will find all no matter where that AL is. If I don't have that option selected, but if I do, it only finds the end of the word. So another way to narrow down searches to find what you are looking for in particular. I've now started back at the top of our example, and I've closed out the navigation pane. We did have a few more options that we might want to investigate, but they are used fairly rarely, and so let's go ahead and go back to the editing group and go to find in the drop down so that we can go to the advanced find and see what's there. Now when we click on the advanced find, this has stayed open from a search that I recently did. So let me go back with less. Now when you see this small dialog box, you may be very familiar with it if you've used Word with older versions. And you'll notice at the top left it has a Find tab, a Replace tab, and a Go To tab, which is pretty much the options that we also see in the editing group. Well, of course I could do a search and do Find What, but let's click on More here in the lower left, and let me move the dialog box up here a little bit. And now not only can we just type a word, but we have the same options that we had with the navigation pane. We can match case, we can use wildcards, we can find all word forms, we can match the suffix just like we did before. But there's even more here in that in the very lower left we can find formatting and special things like special characters. So if we go to Format and click that drop down, we have the choice of font and paragraph and tabs and styles. So that would be styles that are added to a particular word or phrase or paragraph. Well, let's go to font. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that some of the words that I have in this document were copied from another document that was done in Arial, and I have the default of Calibri or Calibri, depending on how you want to pronounce that. So where it says font, I'm just going to start typing AR so I can get to Arial very quickly. And I even could check for bold or not bold, the font size. If I want to do that, I could look for a font color in particular, underlines, underline colors, and some of the special effects that you might have in your document. For example, small caps. So for right now, we'll just go with Arial and click OK. And because my dialog box is so big, I think I better move it up and to the right a little bit. And my option to find things, unlike with that navigation pane where we saw them all at one time, is to simply click on Find Next. Oh, and look, there, it has found, I probably need to scroll up just a tad, it has found the words that came from that other document that are in, as we look at our font group here, in Arial. So it's a really nice way to be able to find some things very quickly. If I decide that I would like to do another find of some kind, I need to be careful that I remove this Arial font setting, because it will also look to make sure that what I am looking for has this Arial font. Instead of going to Format in the lower left and then trying to remember what font I need to remove, what I can do is come over to the third button here where it says No Formatting. And when I click on No Formatting, it removes the formatting from the find terms. So that's a really nice, quick, easy way to kind of clean things up and set your find so that you can do a nice search. Now, we could also, as I come down here to the lower left, look at Special. And when I click on Special, notice all the different characters that I might want to find. And it sort of depends on what you do as to what you're going to look for. I have, in converting Excel to Word, run into times where I've needed to change a comma to a tab, or I've at the end of a line found that I had 2 paragraph marks and need to change the 2 paragraph marks maybe to 1. But what we'll do is just a simple search where we're going to look for the tab characters within our document. And notice that it has its own way of notating what a tab key pressed looks like. And again, then we will need to go to Find Next. And when we do, we can see that in this case, that tab is invisible. So I may even close out here a second and turn on the Show Hide. And now we can see that it's even highlighted. Well, let me go back to Find, Advanced Find, and I'm going to need to yet again go to Special, find the tab key, and let's find Next. And notice that now, as it cycles through, and I'll just keep clicking Find Next, it finds all of the tab notations within my document, whether they are hidden or visible. While we're here and the tabs are visible, let's look at finding the tabs and replacing some of them with commas, which might be something that you would do. You might do the opposite as well, find the commas and then replace them with tabs. But let's find tabs and replace them with commas. To do that, we can go back up to our editing group, and in this case we'll go with Replace and click. Now it opens exactly the same dialog box that we were just in, but notice how now it's the Replace tab that is active, and it says, what do you want to find? Well, if we want to find tabs, we need to go to Special in the lower left and find Tab Character, and then what do you want to replace it with? Well, I want to put in a comma. Now I could just replace one at a time, which at sometimes makes the best sense, or if I really know my document and I know that what I am replacing will not mess up any of my documents, it's not going to change any of the words, it's not going to change any of the phrases, I might decide to replace all. But in this case, I'm going to do a Find Next, and it says, well, it was there at the end, should we start at the beginning? And it takes me to the tab before May. Now, I don't think I want to replace that. Comma May doesn't make sense. So I'll find Next, and find that tab. Now I do want to replace it, and that's where I'll click on the replace button by itself. So now as you look at my document, I have May, comma, licensed truck, and then it's come down to my next line with a tab. And again, I don't want to replace that one, so I'll do a find next, but I will replace this one. Yet again, I will not replace the one before June, so I'll do a find next, and I can replace. So you can selectively find and replace. Just be really careful with those global replacements, because occasionally you wind up creating words that you really didn't mean to create in the process. When you look at the editing group, you can see that we got just a little bit out of order so that we could do a quick replace. But now I've gone back up to the top of the example and I've added in line numbering. Now, some different jobs require line numbering all the time, and sometimes people work in positions where they will never need line numbering. So it is just where you are in your circumstances as to whether you will ever need to add in line numbering. But it helps with our little quick example when we go up to Find, click that drop down, and then we go to Go To. Now Go To has a keyboard shortcut of Control G, and I'll click on Go To. And as we look at this Find and Replace dialog box, you can see that Go To is the third tab. And on the left-hand side, it says, well, what do you want to go to? You could go to a particular page, a section if you have section breaks, lines, which is what we'll do. But if you have bookmarks or comments or footnotes or endnotes, or you've created fields or tables or graphics or equations or objects or headings, you can go to those specific items. Now, the larger the document, the more helpful this is. And I must confess that I generally just use it to go from one page to another page. Or I know that I need to make an edit on page 10. It's a lot easier to just go to and then page and type in a 10 as opposed to trying to scroll to page 10. But because our example is only one page, we'll do this example instead, where I'm going to select line, and then it says, well, enter the line number. Well, let's see, we have all sorts of lines. I think I'll type 16, and then at the bottom right, click Go To, and as I move over, you can see that line 16 is now kind of at the top of the page. So it wasn't exact or perfect, but it got me kind of where I want to go. Let me go to line 23 and Go To. And again, it's not highlighted, but it takes me right to where I can see that line as the top of the page. Well, let's go to line 5 then. Isn't perfect, but it is a pretty good approximation so that it gets you pretty much where you want to go. And then when we're finished, we'll go to the bottom right of that dialog box and click Close. Let's look at the last choice in the editing group, which is Select. And when we click the drop down here, Select All is probably the choice you will make the most, and you may already know that you could also use the keyboard shortcut of Control A. You may be able to select some objects, including shapes and text areas. So if you're looking at objects that are behind text, that could be helpful. Or you can select text with similar formatting. Let me do that. And it's found my heading here that is all bold and slightly larger than the rest of the text. If I go to Select All, then it simply highlights everything that is in my document. So those are some of the things that you may decide to do with that Select option. And that is our editing group of Find, Replace, Go To is in there, and Select. To learn even more, visit mymcpl.org/online learning, where you will find online resources that include Universal Class, LinkedIn Learning, and Learning Express Library. Be sure to join us each week as we present a variety of tech topics. Each week we premiere 3 new videos. You'll be able to find them at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday or at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. You can find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, or if you prefer, be sure to subscribe to our MCPL MO channel on YouTube, where you'll be able to find our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.